And I know that my life could be probably a lot more comfortable. I wouldn't be spending 60% of my rent on this apartment, or my income on this apartment every month, if I had a better job and more comfort. But no, I'm a proud barista and a proud organizer, and I will always be a rank and filer and an organizer, because that you have to give that up and be willing to give that up to actually see change. So I think being deconditioned and learning about our past has allowed me to get out of the scarcity mindset and recognize that the only way to actually improve my conditions and to make sure that never comes down to oppress me again is by standing in solidarity with every other group and class and gender and race of people who are similarly being attacked and oppressed. Because if the logic of oppression continues, today it may be, trans folks who are under attack, but tomorrow it could be interracial marriage. It could be like it's every single oppressed group is connected through their oppression. And we talk about historically race, talk about existence and essence. Ta-Nehisi Coates in Between the World and Me said that racism is I think race is the child of racism, not the father. That race was created as a construct in a science to perpetuate and justify slavery. And even during early parts of chattel slavery, right, Bacon's Rebellion showed that white people and native people and black people coming together to overthrow their enslavers was a huge threat. So perpetuating and developing race science to what we still have today in terms of deeply entrenched racism is a part of our conditioning, not a part of our existential, like the thing that makes us human. So I want to see a world that completely works through and sheds those that conditioning and that oppressive mentality that we've all internalized and been taught. But I think the only way to do that, again, is to reckon with our past, and hopefully that will drive us to rejecting our scarcity mindset. But I think it's possible. I think John and I prove it to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think,
A million other people, yeah.
well, so sure, plenty of
Yeah.
people. And I think, we haven't said the word yet, but I think ego in kind of the psychological and that form comes into play here of like overcoming your own ego to do that. And to me, it's like when the ego breaks bad, it's almost like a cancer, John, not just to stick with that kind of aspect of it. Like once it gets into your psyche, it's like a poison that no good is going to come from it. And the reason I say that is like, talk about, slavery, and we're talking about there, right? Like it's this idea, as soon as people start acting in their own interest and they start convincing themselves that like the scarcity mindset and me being better off is okay and the way to go, you've now opened the door to all sorts of human suffering and problems that is hugely problematic. And the reason why I think that's so important is that I think for a lot of people, I think many people are well-intentioned, but the ego is such a sophisticated thing that sometimes we convince ourselves that like, oh, we're doing this for the right reason, but it's really ego behind it. And again, in that same concept, as soon as you let that cancer in and it's there, then it becomes, you don't know where it's going to go. So let me ask you guys both, kind of staying on this same thread. And again, hopefully you understand. I'm asking because I am so impressed by what you guys are doing and how you approach the world. How do you guys know in your terms that there's not, I think ego is always at play, but that ego isn't at play here, right? The idea of trying to change the world, the idea of trying to be the one that helps, fix these deep societal issues that we've had since almost the beginning of time. You could look at that and say, well, is there a legacy aspect? Is there an ego aspect that you want to be the one to do that? That it's no longer about profit and capitalism for you guys. You've just kind of changed the framework and said what the ultimate goal is now is quote unquote making the world a better place and being a part of that change, which again, objectively is a good thing. But if the ego is driving that still, does that ultimately end in the same place? Like, is that what always brings us back? Even the most well-intentioned of people, if their ego is driving it, it's going to lead us back to the same place where we oppress people and we hurt people and all that. So like, how do you guys know? Have you thought about that to say like how much of it is your own ego versus true altruistic, I want to just make the world a better place because that's just the right thing to do?
First of all, I feel like I've got an intellectual deficit talking to you guys. Let me be clear. But,
I don't see that, but
after the last complex philosophical conversation, I was thinking, geez, I mean, my answer is when I used to go see babies or young toddlers playing together of different races, they're not racist.
They didn't care.
They're just other toddlers.
Yeah.
So it's simple enough for me. But to answer your question, ego can take many forms. you know, my ego used to be fed by making things better for people.
Sure.
You know, I used to feel huge satisfaction if we organized a contract battle and won better pensions and won better seniority rights, you know, won better retirement. I felt very gratified. I mean, I love the organizing process. I love talking to other people. I love mobilizing them. And then I love understanding how far you can go so that you haven't left the people behind you. You know, in other words, we were once on a wildcat strike, and it was pretty clear we had played our hand out as far as we could, and that we had to go back. Well, it hurt ego-wise a little bit, you know, because I had been responsible in some ways for leading people out, but I had to, you know, replace my ego with what's best for everybody. And when we did that, we let everybody back into the shop, into the factory, and we won things. So that's what satisfies my ego.
Can I ask on that, John, just on that, just interjecting that point, because I think you get into the core of it a little bit. Like that you said before, like I just love helping people and making the world better. What I think is fascinating about that is if you take that framework and say, in that instance, it's okay. Like it brings you joy and pleasure to help people to win those contracts. Therefore, it's a good thing. It's healthy ego. It's okay. What if there's other people in the world where it just brings them great joy to just amass great wealth and to just, you know, have 17 mansions? Couldn't they talk back to the three of us and say, hey, I'm using the same framework. It just feels really good for me. I just love it. And it's good. Mine happens to be here. Yours happens to be there. You can even go extreme and say, you know, God forbid a pedophile says, I just love, you know, molesting kids. Like when I say philosophical, trying to get to the root of it, those are the types of things I try and look at, because on the one hand, what you're saying makes perfect sense. You get great joy out of helping people win better contracts when it comes to labor. And we can look at that and say, great, then that's good. The other stuff is bad. But when you really dig into it and you say, what's the principle here? What's the first principle of what's driving, making that okay and something else bad? I wonder sometimes, is it as clear as we think it is, right? And it's not to say what you're doing is wrong, John. It's trying to just get to the essence of that, of like, how do we know that's categorically good and that's categorically bad?